So now it's my pleasure to introduce the next speaker who was just up here, Pete Martinez. Pete is a graduate of the University of Miami, where he's been recognized as distinguished alumni and as a member of Tau Beta Pi and the Iron Arrow Honor Society. He's a veteran of the information technology industry, was an IBM vice president and is currently a visiting professor at MIT. He's also the incoming president of the Association of Cuban Engineers. And so now I ask you to please join me in welcoming him to the podium.
This is a celebration 300 years in the making. Anybody remember when the University of Havana was founded? Many of you were there. The year was 1726. So we're coming up on the 300th anniversary of a very, very long heritage that we have as Cubans. Just to put it in perspective, Harvard University was founded in this country in the year 1638. So it's that legacy. It is one of the key institutions in this hemisphere from a legacy point of view. But we're here to celebrate and to honor the Cuban engineer of yesterday, the Cuban engineer of today, and the Cuban engineer of tomorrow. But we pay special homage to those that made the transition, the valiant transition from Cuba to the United States, leaving everything except their values, their commitment, and their education. We recognize that South Florida was actually one of the greatest beneficiaries of all of this talent. Within a very short period of time, thousands of engineers came to this city and created what is now the showcase for the hemisphere in terms of one of the world-leading cities. But it was so important in that transition period that we recognize that these great, great individuals not only came on and learned a different language and created new jobs, but they were powerful enough and visionary enough to look backwards and say, there are 1,000 more coming behind me, what can I do to help? So that unselfish pride and that unselfish caring is what created this legacy. So you're going to hear tonight about the specific programs that were put in place by great institutions like the University of Miami and FIU to actually enable this transition and project it and create the excellence that we've had. Now, aside from the typical infrastructure that you associate with engineers, which is the buildings, the roads, the waterways, there were some very, very important technological advancements that are attributed to the Cuban-American engineer. Right outside, when you walk on your right-hand side, is one of the first IBM personal computers developed, 1981. It's like number 3 off the lot. We were able to borrow that from the Historical Society of Boca Raton. Why is that so meaningful? Over 50 Cuban-American engineers worked on that first IBM personal computer, which changed the world forever. So if you look at the contributions in the technology field, you start looking at some major, major accomplishments from individuals that highlight. You're going to hear some very, very magical words. The namesake of this institution, Ingeniero Roberto Goizueta, he was a graduate from Yale University in 1948. From Yale University, goes back to Cuba. He was the leader and the director of 5 bottling plants. When the revolution started, he was pulled from Cuba to Miami and then was given responsibilities in the Caribbean. Ultimately, he gets pulled to headquarters of Coca-Cola in Atlanta. Meteoric rise, and by 1979, he is appointed president of the Coca-Cola Company. 2 years later, he becomes chairman, and for the next 17 years, he led one of the most powerful organizations in all of the world. Not only did he run a company, he created the most powerful brand in the world, Coca-Cola. Introduced and innovated projects such as Diet Coke, New Coke, and completely reinvented the business itself. As a matter of fact, a key attribute of Roberto Goizueta was, if you are not risking, you are not likely to fail. But if you do not risk, you will fail. It is our responsibility to risk and innovate, because if you do not risk, you will do nothing. That's the inspiration that he gave all of us. And everybody in this room can associate with those words, because you risked it all. Aside from Roberto, we recognize other individuals that had major contributions. Dr. Niels Diaz. Dr. Niels Diaz was the chairman of the Nuclear Regulatory Agency for the United States. Amazing. A foreigner that comes to our land, graduates from the University of Miami, gets his doctorate, and is running the Nuclear Regulatory Agency. Dr. Mitch Maidike, president of one of the largest universities in the United States, FIU. And not only was the president, created a monstrous empire of what that university is all about today. Dr. Irving Vladovsky Berger, Kubiche. Director and founder of IBM's Internet division. Now, you think of something that changed the world forever. Now, he did not invent the internet, but if you remember something called e-commerce, which was taking the internet and make it into a commercial enterprise, that was him. Finally, when we look at the responsibilities of the individuals that they've created here, we look at how they went about accomplishing it. This is a group, a culture that did not want or ask from the society, from the community, or from the government. That would have been an insult. It would have been lack of pride. Complete opposite. They made the system better. They did not take a penny from the system. They made the system better. They figured out a way to work within the system, created better infrastructure, better technologies, a better life. These were not very self-serving individuals. These were not politicians. They were not actors. They were not athletes in it for themselves. Their measure of success is leaving the world behind a little bit better than they found it. So with that, we're going to go through 3 presentations that are very, very opportune. The first one is from Delfin Molins. Delfin is not only a past president of the Cuban-American Association of Civil Engineers, but also a distinguished engineer within the Miami-Dade County engineering group. Delfin? Yes, sir. Please.